So thank you again for joining us for today's webinar on firm maturity. As you get settled, just a few reminders. Please use the Q&A function for any questions, and remember to be constructive in any of those questions or comments to the presenter and to one another to ensure that we have a session that is productive. AIA California will submit your one AIA learning unit for those of you who do complete this session in full. And as always, the webinar content and additional resources will be available online. Today's webinar, which will walk you through a structured maturity index to help you assess your firm's strengths and weaknesses, is brought to you by BQE. Again, it qualifies for one AIA learning unit for those watching live, and AIA California will report those for you once you have finished the session in full. Now to quickly introduce our presenter. As a distinguished thought leader, Steve Burns, FAIA, blends his passion for design and firm management with profound insights into emerging technologies. Over the past 2 decades, working directly with over 1,400 firm owners, Steve has significantly contributed to reshaping these businesses for enhanced growth and sustainability. His career highlights include a 7-year tenure at SOM Chicago, founding BBA Architects in 1993 and growing it to a 17-person architect firm before its 2007 sale, and creating Arca Office, a groundbreaking project management software company acquired by BQE Software in 2010. Recognized for his significant impact on the profession, in 2009, Steve was elevated to the AIA College of Fellows. Currently, as the founder of the Well-Designed firm, he focuses on leading AE firms to operational excellence, mentoring leaders to craft businesses as elegant and innovative as the architecture they create. Now on to today's presentation. Steve, it's always great to see you. Please take it away. Oh, I think you might be muted.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca, for pointing that out. It would be really a shame to go through an hour and have nobody hear anything I said. Anyway, thanks for the introduction. I apologize for that being a little bit too long, and welcome everybody. I guess it's mostly lunch for you all, hopefully, on the West Coast. So enjoy that while I get through this material. It's on the Firm Maturity Index, which is really more about how to figure out where your firm currently stands on this index. And it's a term I think many of you may not be familiar with. It sort of came more aware of it when BQE Software actually released a wonderful quiz, which I hope you will make it available at some point during the webinar. You can always check it out later, which is a maturity index quiz to help you find out more about your own firm based on certain bits of information you provide. I think it's a really fascinating topic, but it's actually really, I've never heard it discussed anywhere else. Normally, what we look at is we'll see benchmarking reports. These are the kinds of things where we'll see dozens of KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators that allow us to kind of compare ourselves to other firms out there. Like what is profit margins or utilization rates or net revenue per full-time employee, on and on. And if you're lucky, they'll break down that data in the benchmarking report to the cohort of firm sizes. So you're not accidentally comparing yourself if you're an 8-person firm to some firm of 80 people and then wondering why you aren't hitting these benchmark results that they are. So that's also very helpful. But what these benchmarking reports don't do is to tell you what you actually need to do to move from a firm with, let's say, a 7% profit margin to become that firm with a 37% profit margin. All you do when you look at benchmarking reports is go, gee, I'm 7 and they're 37, and then the rest you're going to have to figure out on your own. Now, over the past few decades, as Rebecca mentioned, I've had this just amazing opportunity to work directly with about 1,400 AE firms, helping guide them through various kinds of challenges or growth stages that they've been through. And based on those experiences, I've created this particular presentation to help focus on a framework that applies to any firm, large or small, young or old. And it's going to help you see where you are, where you're headed, and most importantly, what steps you need to take to get you to move along in that maturity index. Now, I'm going to talk about really what firm maturity means and why that actually does matter. I'm then going to introduce what I've found to be the four stages of firm growth or maturity. Starting at the infant stage, and then you go to become an adolescent, maybe a young adult, and finally a mature adult. I will follow that with an explanation of 6 key areas that are part of every single firm that actually help you determine where you land on that index. So, how does your firm deal with bringing in new work? When that work comes in, how do you manage those projects? How you deliver what hopefully is a great client experience? How do you handle your firm's finances? How do you manage the billing process or the invoicing process? And then finally, I'm going to take a look at the overall operations that is underlying. I call it the footing of your firm. And then lastly, I will share a step-by-step roadmap to help you move from one stage to the next. And I do want to start with a simple analogy, which is human growth and human development. So you wouldn't expect some 8-year-old child to have the emotional intelligence of a 28-year-old, let alone a 58-year-old. So each stage of our lives brings its own strengths and challenges. And I think we all recognize certain expectations depending where somebody is in their maturity. And by the same token, your startup firm shouldn't try to run like a mature 50-person enterprise. And a firm that's in the expansion mode, which I'll get to in a minute, it's one of the stages, it shouldn't behave like a brand new startup. Problems arise when the firm owners don't recognize what's appropriate for their current stage of development. I have worked with a 3-year-old firm with seven architects whose owner had been insisting on these complex corporate protocols that slowed everyone down. And some people were so unhappy that they actually quit. And then conversely, on the flip side of the coin, I've worked with a 32-person firm. It had been founded a dozen years earlier, and it was still operating with no systematized project management, no formalized protocols, and there was really no technologies that they were using for efficiency. They functioned as if they were still a startup. And frankly, they considered that startup mentality to be a selling point. And both firms were out of sync with their maturity level. And that causes unnecessary stress and, of course, inefficiency. And that impacts the lives of both their employees, as I just mentioned a moment ago, but as well as their clients. So the key takeaway for you right now is you need to operate in line with where you actually are, not where you used to be and where you remember the fun old days or where you imagine you would like to be sometime in the future. Growth is a process. Each phase you go through builds on the last. And when you understand all the stages, you're going to make much better financial and strategic decisions, creating a firm that runs smoothly throughout its growth. And that allows you to focus on the part of the business that I think you love most, which is probably delivering exceptional design services. So the question to ask yourself is, where does my firm stand today? And am I moving forward with intention? So you don't need to launch the poll question just yet. Or are you simply reacting to immediate demands, or whichever way the wind blows? So I noticed that Rebecca did just launch a poll question. I guess it's okay for you to do this, but wait until I finish this particular slide before you go ahead and answer the question. Now, in my experience, firms will all begin in the startup stage when the focus that you have should be on winning enough work just to stay afloat. From there, you're going to transition into the growth stage where incoming work becomes more consistent Your teams generally become larger or start to take shape at all. And some structures begin to form in the firm. Eventually, you move into the expansion stage, refining your systems, strengthening your business development efforts, um, building out better project management practices. And then finally, you reach the maturity stage where the operation basically runs extremely smoothly. The leadership transition has been planned and put into effect. The firm's reputation and their profitability are pretty much established. And it is common for a firm to get stuck between, let's say, the growth stage and the expansion stage, where the owners sense that they've kind of outgrown the startup mode, but they haven't embraced the system or the mindset that you need to scale your firm effectively. And then over the next few slides, I'm going to break down every one of those stages into a bit more detail. I'm going to discuss what are the common challenges that kind of firm owners face during this growth stage. I will outline some of the strategies for advancing to the next level. I think most of you probably know some people who are far more mature than their age would suggest, others whose behavior is absurdly immature for what seems to be their years on this planet. So keep in mind that maturity is not directly correlated to the age of your firm. Many firms will stay in the growth stage for decades. Other firms will mature from startup to expansion in just a few years. It's about how effectively you're operating right now and how deliberately or intentionally you're planning for what's going to happen next. So now with that in mind, go ahead and answer this question, the poll question that we have. I have 3 poll questions today. So the sooner we get them answered, the sooner I'll get to the Q&A. So are you in the startup stage, which is the survival mode? Are you in the growth stage, which is now things are beginning to kind of get stabilized? Are you in the expansion? Those systems are actually part of the system, but you continue to develop them, and your firm could literally blow up because you're prepared for growth, or are you at that maturity stage? Or if you're not sure still, to say somewhere in between. And Rebecca, great. So 20% of you are in startup, and 26% of you are either in expansion, or 26% of you are in maturity. Only 14% of you don't know where you are right now or are in growth. That's really nice. A good spread of different kinds of people in different stages of their development are here today. Okay, we have to begin with the startup stage. And at this point, your firm's day-to-day reality is simply just staying alive. It's usually the founder who is juggling everything. They win new work, they deliver the projects themselves, they're handling, or as I tend to see, mishandling their finances, and they're keeping the team, if that in fact exists, moving ahead. There is no long-term strategy yet because survival mode thinking is focusing on getting through the next month, and for some of you, getting through the next week. And if that sounds like it's your current situation, know that it is completely normal. Every architecture firm starts somewhere. It is almost always here. The real risk is staying in the survival mode for too long, because the challenges that you're facing can quickly become overwhelming. The revenue is going to be unpredictable. Cash is always tight. Most of your new clients are coming to you purely from word of mouth. This approach to running a business isn't sustainable. And that ends up meaning that you're going to have these big swings in your workload. That's going to make it impossible for you to do any kind of planning. The founder who is in this stage also tends to underprice their services. They take on too many responsibilities themselves, and they end up burning out. And one of your biggest hurdles is trying to do everything informally. There's rarely a solid system for tracking anything, whether it's your finances or your contracts, or anything to do with managing a project, which means that you're going to have scope creep. It's another common pitfall. There is no standardized process that will prevent your client just from asking for extra work, and then you're just excited to do anything that will get a bill paid. So you go ahead and do the work. You don't go through that process of signing off on an additional service or a change order. Uh, Luckily, this particular method of operations doesn't have to be permanent. Breaking out of that phase depends on building a stronger foundation. So even some very simple steps, like setting up a basic accounting system and creating standardized contracts, will dramatically improve cash flow, and it'll reduce the unpaid overtime, meaning really the time you do work that you don't get paid for. Those are the small steps that get you out of this wild forest and onto a navigable pathway, a trail in the woods that gets you to the paved road that then takes you onto that highway. So we got to get into a path of some sort. It's also time to develop a repeatable process for attracting new clients, something beyond just waiting for your phone to ring. And once you start delegating tasks or bringing in help for whether the admin or your bookkeeping, whatever else, that is what really where your mind shouldn't be. That's when you can focus more time on growth or business opportunities. So if you are here at this stage right now, if you are a startup, just take a moment and think about what you can fix first. Is it the way you um, do your pricing, how you track your finances, or how you even approach the winning of new business? Because growth doesn't happen by accident. It comes from these deliberate choices that keep you moving forward and takes you out of this survival mode. If you don't do these things, you stay in survival mode for your entire existence, and your existence is actually under threat. So how does the firm now grow into the growth mode? Okay, at this stage, projects and the revenue start to stabilize. You're starting to see repeat work, and the business feels a bit more structured. But with this structure also comes some new challenges, especially if you're working harder than ever and you're not seeing the financial gains that you anticipated. A common misconception is simply growing will fix everything, but growth will also magnify your inefficiencies. So if you're dealing with cash flow issues, you have disorganized processes, or you are still underpricing, those problems are only going to get bigger as you take on more projects and more staff. So the firms in the growth mode usually have a modest team in place. They'll have a basic set of business systems, and they're going to have more consistent flow of work. Financially, there's improvement over the survival stage, but expenses are also rising quickly. And that means you're going to have profit margins that are going to be under pressure if you don't tighten up your systems. More projects and more people mean more complexity. So this is the time you should really begin to put together an operations plan. And one of the best ways to strengthen your foundation is to formalize project tracking and financial management. If you don't already, in this stage, have software in place to monitor your budgets and your timelines, now is the time to implement it. Otherwise, you're going to be out of sync with where you are actually in the maturity scale. You also need a more strategic approach to taking on projects. Not every opportunity that comes through to your door, or through, if someone rings your phone, that's not necessarily going to be good for your business. Another important step is leadership development. If you've been to any of my other webinars, I talk very much about delegation and developing the next generation. Start defining roles, spread out the decision making, let go of some of these tasks that really don't require your direct involvement. If you haven't already, this is the moment to shift from this reactive word of mouth marketing to a proactive business development strategy. That might mean targeting a very specific type of client or a project type that you take on, building a presence, at least on LinkedIn, maybe on other social media platforms. Maybe you start to use a CRM tool, a client relationship management tool, to track your leads and your prospects and your clients and your opportunities and any marketing campaigns. Whatever systems or technologies you choose, consistency in the use of these is going to be key, because a steady pipeline helps you plan for your future instead of just taking on whatever comes your way. The biggest trap that you're going to find in the growth mode is trying to expand too quickly before you've actually established a strong internal structure. It's like building extra floors on a building before you reinforce that structure, or the foundation. So you're going to keep be able to pile on work, but eventually cracks will appear. So please, to avoid that, always be intentional. Ask yourself, what processes need shoring up right now in our office, and then you take the time to address them before you race to the next stage. I think you should remember that the growth mode is your chance to iron out the issues that will otherwise continue to surface. So if you are here right now, think about one practical step that you could take this month. We got a whole month to do this, to make sure your firm runs more smoothly. The expansion stage, it's sometimes referred to as the scalability stage, that's the point where you are experiencing a steady demand, your revenue is stronger, and your team is growing. But consider this question: when is the actual right time for you to scale? So do you go all in the moment an exciting new project appears, or do you wait until you hit some sort of a certain financial milestone? I find very often firms expand too quickly without the right foundation. That's going to lead to financial strain and chaos. You might even end up with a diluted company culture where you've expanded the team so fast without consideration that that destroys the culture that you've been building. And the negative impacts of this are as stressful as when you were back in that startup stage and you had sleepless nights and you're sure how you're going to pay your bills. If you're truly in the expansion mode, you're likely going to have a leadership team, but beyond just the founder. You're taking on bigger, more complex projects, and you've set up a consistent process for finance and operations. But these same positives bring other challenges. You're juggling at larger staff, you've got bigger client expectations, potentially higher overhead. So clearly, it's not enough just to grow. You need to grow wisely. And another pitfall here is losing quality, as I mentioned, culture in your push for that expansion. So as you add more people, you might worry whether your design vision or your company values are going to stay intact. So hiring now becomes a really high stakes game, because you need that right expertise, but you also must have the right fit. I'm going to add a little caveat here. I truly believe every single hire, no matter what stage of maturity you are, is really critical. Every member of your team impacts your culture. So if you have people with the right expertise, that you want to join the team, I would caution against them if you sense that they don't mesh with the culture that you've cultivated. Okay. Often the pressure is high for you to fill these positions, but I can assure you, the wrong person with the right skills is like making a deal with the devil. In addition, this is the stage where you take on larger projects that typically bring along more legal and more contractual complexity. So the stakes are higher if something goes wrong. And if your firm doesn't handle this stage carefully, you're going to hit a wall, you're going to have overworked leaders, inconsistent profit, stalled momentum. So the key to avoiding that is building a sustainable structure, the structure required to support the weight of a firm in the growth stage. It's it's insufficient to hold this heavier firm that you now have in the expansion phase. So the structures that you have that developed in your firm, for the earlier stages, they need to mature to support the phase you are in right now. Here's the time where you strengthen leadership and delegation so not everything runs through that single decision maker. Here's where you optimize the financial systems to track profitability and measure a host of key performance indicators that give you a better understanding of the details that are going on inside of your firm. I've got this like thought, this maybe an analogy that if you think about, primitive man really just had their eyes to see the world around them. And then I think like in the 16th century, the microscope was invented, and we started to realize there are things around us and in us that we never knew existed, but which were impacting our very lives. And then, it's 100 years later, in the 17th century, the telescope is invented. It's another technology, another tool, and it started to just give us much better understanding of what's really going on around us. So we mature as we access tools that enable us to focus and understand our reality. So expanding isn't just about taking on more, it's about ensuring your systems can handle that growth, that the people aren't going to get burnt out, and you're not going to sacrifice your profits. So if you are now one of those people who is in the expansion mode, ask yourself, are you growing in a way that is truly sustainable, or are you reacting to some increased demand? So consider right for this month, what bottleneck is currently limiting your growth, and how can you strengthen the foundation before you put more floors on top of that? So now we finally made it to the mature stage. Get the gray hair. That's where your firm becomes more than just a thriving business. It's actually an institution. You have a solid reputation, and I think it's 26% of you should be here today. You have a resilient operational model, and you have a very clear path forward. So you're on the highway. So maturity means you're in a position to shape your future with real intention rather than with necessity. The firm has a forward-looking focus on new markets, new technologies, even new ownership. But even when you're operating at this level, there are still fresh challenges you need to tackle. It's very easy to become complacent if things are just working as they always have. Hey, the systems work great. I call it it's the de facto way of doing business is it's not broken, so we don't have to change anything. It actually functions. That's going to get in your way of actually staying competitive in a rapidly changing market. No matter how established you are, there is always a new technology or a new competitor or a shift in market demands that you have to be nimble enough to adjust to. Firms at this stage also have to decide whether they want to keep growing. They maybe want to branch into other areas, optimize their core business. Whichever route you choose, the key here is please avoid stagnation. Maturity doesn't mean that your work is done. It means you have a strong platform, but that's the place where you get to continue to evolve. And here's another analogy. I think, a championship team doesn't stop practicing once they've won the title. They refine, adapt, they plan for what's next. Maturity is going to be the same way. It is about ensuring that your success carries on far beyond uh, where you are today, or maybe you need to move on and there's a younger generation that, is going to take over for you, and you're going to leave them with something meaningful for the future. So now I've explored the 4 stages of maturity. Sorry if it took a little too long. I now want to look at the first, and I think it's probably arguably the most critical business challenge every AE firm faces, and that's simply winning work. Think about how your firm currently lands projects. Do you depend mostly on referrals, repeat clients, or competitive bidding? And are you still in a reactive state, simply responding to whatever opportunities come your way? So the truth is, business development evolves as your firm matures. And what works in these early days is not going to serve you later on. When that firm is in the startup stage, winning work often means leaning very heavily on your personal network. The founder usually takes on any project that's available. Sometimes they are underpricing their services just to earn the work and keep the doors open. And I don't think it's sometimes, I think it's every time they take a project, they're undervaluing their services. There is no formal marketing strategy yet, so business development is going to be stressful. If you are here right now, consider which relationships or basic marketing efforts might offer a more consistent flow of leads. Even a very simple one-page outreach plan, and you compare that with a growing list of client testimonials, that can help start your firm building some momentum. Once then your firm is stabilized, you're in the growth stage, the approach to winning work becomes a bit more strategic. Referrals and personal connections will always play a part of your business, but now you probably have developed or implemented a simple CRM tool, a client relationship management program. You've started creating templates for all of your proposals. You're also learning to distinguish between profitable work and projects that might not be worth your time. So if you are here, ask yourself which areas of your marketing and proposal process feel inconsistent, and think about that one step you can take this month to standardize them. And a very small tweak like the a go no go process or refining your brand message. Those two things can dramatically improve your success rate. Now, in the expansion stage, your firm has transitioned from chasing opportunities to attracting them. That's where branding has become more defined, business development goals are being measured, and you are regularly participating in thought leadership, whether that means speaking at conferences or writing articles or hosting webinars. It is easy, though, to become overextended by pursuing too many leads all at once. So if you are in this phase, check whether you are devoting your resources to the right kinds of projects and make sure you're not taking on work that diverts you from your firm's real strengths or what you have written in your vision statement in your strategic plan. By the time a firm reaches maturity, it is recognized as the go-to expert. It has a steady stream of new clients that are seeking it out. It has a dedicated biz dev team who generally handles all of the outreach. And that leaves your technical leadership free to focus on design excellence or client relationships. Again, it's important not to become complacent. Industries shift, new technologies appear, an upstart competitor can catch you off guard if you assume that your position is guaranteed. And if you aspire to reach this level, please begin investing in high-level marketing initiatives. Build exclusive offerings to deepen your client loyalty. Use data analytics tools like today's sponsor to keep an eye on your firm's business development performance. Wherever you are on the maturity index, it always helps to pause and then ask, where is the biggest roadblock right now in our firm's journey? And winning work is the lifeblood of any firm, but it's not just about landing new contracts. It's about building intentional relationships and a reliable pipeline that sets you up for every subsequent stage of growth. So for now, just consider the question, what's the one shift that we can make this quarter? I won't make you do it this month to strengthen the way your firm wins its work. And so the winning the work is a major milestone, but the real test will lie in how you deliver your projects. Can you do it on time and within budget? And will you have a happy client? And is your team really engaged by the end of that project? So that's where project management comes in, and it's going to evolve significantly as your firm matures. So think about how your firm currently handles project scheduling, budgeting. How do you deal with the scope changes? Do you have a set system in place, or is everybody just figuring things out as they go? And that's what's happening in the startup stage. Again, the founder who's wearing every single hat, designer, marketer, project manager, is having to figure this out. There is rarely a formal system in place. The deadlines will tend to shift based on the founder's personal workload. If you are here, please consider introducing even the simplest project tracking tool to help you keep tabs on your project due dates, all the tasks that you need to accomplish during every phase of your project, and the overall project budget. Then once your firm progressed to that growth stage, the founder can no longer manage every project themselves. So the responsibilities start to spread across a small team. That's when project tracking becomes structured. Maybe you have a weekly check-in, or you've begun using some time tracking software, but not everyone in the office is following the same process, and projects will slip through the cracks. So if this describes your firm, ask yourself, how many hours or dollars do you think are slipping away due to the fact that our firm is inconsistent in these kinds of processes? And the fix, it could be as simple as just holding a 15-minute project review every single week to align everybody on what's the budget for this project, where do we stand, what needs to be achieved this coming week, what's the overall project schedule, are we ahead or behind, and what are the next steps? So for the expansion stage, firms are now juggling multiple large projects. They probably hire dedicated project managers who are scheduling and budgeting and dealing with client communications. This is the turning point where formal resource planning becomes essential. And now you're going to be relying on these advanced tools to keep track of everyone and everything, and you're going to do it all in one place so that you have instant understanding of what everybody is working on and what are the project schedules and who's underutilized, who's overutilized, all of that. That's why you need resource scheduling systems. Then finally, in the maturity stage, project management, as is everything at that stage, is pretty much well oiled. Everybody knows what are the firm's preferred processes, and the project managers are professionally trained. They may have come from architecture and they've evolved to managers, but then they're given enhanced training so that they know really the unique skills of a true project manager. They are data driven, so that they're not making decisions based on their uh, whims, but they're actually able to forecast. And those are really important skills for a project manager. And at this stage of maturity, please keep investing in project management training and in the mentorship so that your new leaders can bring fresh perspectives, but they're also respecting these proven methods that you have been relying on that have gotten you to this stage of maturity. You might even be using AI-driven analytics to spot trends that are going on in real time, and that's going to allow you to pivot very quickly as changes in the market or problems in your business arise. So, as you think about where your firm stands, ask yourself, what's the single improvement in project management only that we might be able to enact in the next coming weeks? Remember that these well-executed projects don't just deliver quality work. I know that's really what you love, is to see your works published, photographed. You're very proud of them. They actually also cultivate happy clients and create these engaged teams. They create the kind of positive reputation that fuels your next round of business. So think of it much more holistically. So we covered winning the work and managing the projects. Another critical element that ties these two together is how your clients actually feel about working with you, working with your firm. So if I, as I almost always do with my clients, I ask to call 3 of their most recent completed clients. What do they say about their experience of working with you? Would they praise your responsiveness and your clarity, or might they mention, slow communications, unclear expectations? So the truth is, the way you handle your client relationships, it's going to shift as your firm matures. So those startup firms, those relationships are totally informal. They're highly personal, with the founder again serving as that single point of contact. And you may not even realize your client is unhappy with you until it's way too late, because you don't have a structured way to get feedback. So if that does sound like it's your current situation, now you think about setting clear communication guidelines and something as simple as a consistent process for onboarding a client, having regular, predictable check-ins. That makes a big difference in preventing scope creep and missed deadlines and underserved expectations by your client. At the growth stage, the client relationship spreads beyond the founder. And while you are still likely to rely on scheduled meetings, there's going to be some inconsistencies from one project team to the next. One client might have a fantastic experience when I call them. The other one feels like they were neglected because the processes that you are hopefully building aren't being uniformly applied by everybody in the office. So if you see this going on in your own firm, you ask yourself whether you've given your staff the training and the tools and the support they need to handle the client communications consistently or whatever the problem might be. When you get to the expansion stage, you're taking on a much more proactive approach to the client engagement, regular progress updates. Hopefully, you're having these very thoughtful post-project debriefs or post-mortems. Even you probably have started doing client segmentation, which means we deal with different types of building types or client types, and we have a team in the office that manages each one of these and knows how to speak their language directly to them. You're also probably honing your branding so the clients feel like they're partnering with a top tier expert rather than hiring just another service professional. And a challenge here is striking the balance between your firm's efficiency, which you're always hopefully looking to improve, and the personalization that your client is experiencing. So as you standardize your processes for this growing roster of clients that you're getting, how are you ensuring that each one of your clients still feels genuinely valued? And if you're in this phase, it's time for you to launch a formal feedback loop. So surveys, those brief check-in calls, even focus groups. So you're never left guessing about your client's satisfaction. And then, of course, when you reach the maturity stage, that client experience is once again part of that well-oiled machine you have, very clear, consistent approach that every single team member in your firm follows. Your firm is now recognized for its top tier service, not just the quality of your product. Once again, the biggest danger is going to be your complacency. So, how do you keep reinventing that client experience so it doesn't become stale or overly bureaucratic or doesn't feel genuine from the perspective of your client? So, it might be time for you to invest in exclusive events or loyalty programs that keep your longstanding clients really excited about working with you. This is the point where you are positioned as a trusted advisor, not just a professional who knows how to do architecture. You want to be the trusted advisor that's going to solidify your relationship. The great client experience isn't just about being nice or being responsive. It's about delivering a level of service that continually brings clients back and it makes them want to refer you to other people. If you tell me that our work isn't the kind of work where clients return for more, it's not repeat business, I really don't care. What you want in any of these cases is that your client is thrilled working with you because then they're going to refer to you to others. They're going to become an evangelist on behalf of your firm. Client relationships, they influence every other part of your business, including your profitability, because the happier clients, they are often more willing to pay your fees and they're going to explore additional services that you might offer to them. So just take a moment. Consider one small change that you can make this month to improve your client experience, whether it is formalizing a feedback system, refining your communications schedule, maybe it's going to be every week, not every month, or just training your team so that they're delivering a consistent high level of service and speaking in the branding tone that you are trying to build for your firm. Okay, I've covered how to win work, to manage the projects, how to effectively create positive client experiences. None of that's going to keep the doors open if your finances are in shambles. So let me ask you a very direct question. Do you know how much profit your firm made last quarter, last month, from every individual project or from every individual employee? When you're running on instinct instead of data, you're actually gambling with the firm's future. And at that startup stage, the founders handling the books themselves. They're mixing their personal and their business expenses. They don't have a clear accounting system. They might have a few good months, and that might mask the fact that their pricing is too low to generate any real profit. Your clients are probably slow to pay you. There's no sense in wasting any time figuring out forecasting. You really just are hoping that the money's going to come in before it's needed. And if you're at this stage, your first step is please separate your business from your personal finances. Start using a basic accounting software program. Set yourself even a target profit margin, even if you're not hitting that yet. So at least you know where you're aiming. In the growth stage, you're bringing in work more predictably. This is when some of the chaos settles, but you can still feel the pressure of paying your bills, paying your payroll, doing that on time. And that is especially problematic when your clients are dragging their feet. You might be starting to track project profitability here and there. Again, it's not consistent so that across all of your projects, so you can't catch these problems before they become the large problems. So now is the time that you need to start creating basic projections for both your firm's revenue and your expenses. And then you also need to start at this stage to set aside some reserves, cash reserves for slower periods. Stop relying on a line of credit to get you through the times when your clients' receivables are 60, 90 days or greater. Also, simple key performance indicators appear on your radar, like what's our team's utilization rates? That helps ensure you're actually charging enough for their time. Okay, we get to the expansion stage. You are intentionally managing your firm's money. You probably have a dedicated financial manager, or at least you have a trusted CPA who's overseeing the finances. Your revenue streams have started to diversify, so you're not solely relying on one big client or one big market sector. You're also monitoring project profitability carefully, and you're probably refining your pricing strategy for various services that you provide. That's what you're doing at this stage of maturity. One challenge here is deciding how much do we reinvest in our firm? Do we hire more people? Are we going to upgrade our technology? Do we need to expand our office space? So balancing those kinds of capital investments with the need for financial stability is going to be imperative. And some firms will hire maybe even a fractional CFO or a financial consultant to help provide some deeper insights into how they do their budgeting and how they do their long-term planning. I'm going to skip the maturity stage because I think you are all clear now that that is a absolutely well-oiled machine. Just do want to point out, though, that the ownership transition is something that's really looming large for these firms in maturity. So how are you going to actually transition that, financially transition the next generation of leadership into the firm? And are your finances in such a way that that transition is going to be affordable by those future leaders for your firm? So I want to move on because I'm running a little long here. So I do want to mention one particular issue that often trips up even the most profitable firms that are out here today, which is your billing practices. If you have ever had a client delay on their payments or refuse to pay you altogether, you know how absolutely frustrating it's going to be to chase them down. This is chasing them down for money that you have earned. In fact, you probably earned that money 30 days before you even billed your client, right? So you can have this steady stream of projects and you can have seemingly satisfied clients, but if they're not paying their bills consistently and you're not collecting on time, you probably don't have the happy clients that you think you have. And your cash flow will always be shaky as long as you're in that stage. And that's what you're doing in the startup stage. I know I'm going to try to just cut through this quickly so that you can get to the Q&A, but there is no clear system for tracking what's been billed. Billing almost happens whenever the owner feels, oh, I can do a bill now. It's not on a structured path. And there's a lot of things one can do at this stage. I would just encouraging you, if you are a owner of a firm that's in the startup stage, make sure your terms are either due upon receipt or no greater than 15 days. Don't do the 30 days. And that's a 60-day swing between when you can do the work and when you actually get paid if you're lucky. So please shorten that. The growth stage, folks, you're probably not by now sending out your invoices on a schedule. I like every 2 weeks, not to every client, but a client like every month, but every 2 weeks you're sending out a batch to a certain client group, and the next 2 weeks another one. That's going to help make your cash flow much smoother rather than sending everything out on 30 days and hoping everything gets paid 30 days later. Because of course, as we all know, our payroll is typically every 2 weeks. And if your client's paying you every 1 month, something has to manage that gap. The expansion mode, you are at this point sending out your bills regularly. It's like clockwork for you. You're hopefully monitoring the billed value versus all that unbilled or that work in progress, so you know exactly where you stand with potential revenue, and then same with the maturity here. So I would just say, as you reflect on where your firm stands on that maturity index when it comes to your billing, just ask yourself if you're actually billing proactively or if you're just hoping your clients will pay you on time. And billing proactively means collections proactively as well, meaning make sure these are, when you send an invoice, you follow up, you make sure there's no questions, and you demand that the payment is made as it says under your contract. This is the last big point I want to make. It is about it's the footing under the foundation of your firm, which is really your firm's operations. And so you have to ask yourself, how smoothly does your office run on a day-to-day basis? Is it organized? Is the activities that are happening, is it predictable? Or does it feel like you're racing around putting out fires every single day? Operations are the glue that keeps your projects and your finances and those client relationships from descending into total chaos. But just like every other aspect of your firm, your approach to how you do operations is going to change as you grow. So in that startup stage, as I mentioned, there's no formal structure going on there. The founder just handles everything themselves, marketing, invoicing, IT issues, you name it. There are no standardized processes to speak of, and you are so busy trying to keep your lights on, there is no time to even begin thinking about your firm's efficiency. And if that sounds familiar, just create a few basic workflows for some of these repetitive, often mundane tasks, and offload whatever you can, whether that's your bookkeeping or your admin duties, that are not the highest and best use of you and your skill set, so that you can focus on growing your firm. Then once you hit the growth stage, you realize that some of the ad hoc operations are no longer cutting it for you. So your team is beginning to expand. Everyone is relying on a different system, or you have no system at all. Everybody builds their own system. You might have started using some software tools, for communication or for finance or what have you, but you're still struggling with the consistency. Also, the staff's roles and their responsibilities are not always crystal clear. So that's making how you delegate a little bit tricky. So documenting even a handful of key processes is going to help reduce your chaos. It's going to keep everybody rowing in the same direction. And then you're now moving to the expansion stage. You are building an operational infrastructure that will allow your firm to scale. Standard operating procedures are being established, and hopefully they're being actually followed. Mostly they're being followed when you have brought on an office manager or you have some sort of HR support. Maybe you even have now a dedicated finance person. So these great intentions you have are someone is actually accountable to make sure they're being executed. This is also the stage where leadership starts to pay some real attention to your resource management. and resource efficiency and profitability across every one of your teams. And make sure you are using data to track your efficiency. Don't forget to invest in leadership development so you have these strong, capable managers who are overseeing your growing operations. So, of course, when you move into the mature stage, where, for example, succession leadership is going to be part of the equation, which you hadn't even thought about for 20 or 30 years, those people are in a position to help manifest that. Okay, so I'm going to pass the rest of that. We do have a quick poll question here. So, Rebecca, you can go ahead and launch this, which I just want to know from you all, which of these particular areas currently give you the most headaches in your office? Are you still struggling with winning work? Is it the project management? Maybe it's all of them, but pick the one that's the biggest. Is it you feel like your client experience is inconsistent or unsatisfactory? Are you having problems with your firm's finances? Your billing procedures are all wrong? Or do you think the overall operations, that footing under a firm, is a problem? And because I'm running long here, Rebecca, give it like 5 more seconds, then we'll share it, and then I will make a couple closing little remarks right here. Wow, so this is pretty interesting. There's almost like a dead heat here between winning new work, project management, and your firm's operations, closely followed by your firm's finances. The client experience is a very small problem. Most of you are very focused on making sure your clients are absolutely thrilled and happy, and I'm happy to hear that. But make sure not one of these is being neglected. So thank you for that. I do want to just ask you, please step back, ask yourself, where is your firm right now? Where do you want it to be? And what's it going to actually take you to get there? Because remember, your firm doesn't move forward by accident. Growth isn't just about adding more projects or adding more staff or being in business for more years. It's about the intentional decisions you make along the way. So regardless of where you are in that maturity index, it's so crucial. Remember, your success or success isn't reserved for the biggest or the most talented design firms out there. It's for the firms that actually can master the business side of their practice. And that is why I'm encouraging you all, please just commit to strengthening the business foundation of your firm. After all, I don't think any of you started your own firm just to be in survival mode. You really launched it so you could do some great work, make some meaningful impact, and hopefully enjoy the journey instead of constantly worrying about your cash flow or the chaos going on or client issues. So if you do feel like you could use